This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA, to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and to continue to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all to subscribe to the podcast on whatever app or website you are listening to this on. That way you always get those notifications, those alerts on your phone or on your computer, or again, whatever device you're listening to this on. And again, you get those notifications and alerts and you never miss an episode when we drop one here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. So if you could subscribe to the podcast, we really would appreciate it. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on that same app or website you are listening to this on. We would really appreciate it. It would give us a big confidence boost again. So if you could leave us a 5-star review, we would really appreciate that. It also lets us know that you guys are enjoying the show and you're loving what we do here at the GSMC Podcast Network. And finally, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would love to interact with you guys more on there. Talk about sports, talk about the show, talk about anything. Again, if you follow us on all those social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we would love to interact with you guys more on there as well. Again, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would really appreciate it. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these extremely trying times in the world. We have a fantastic show for you all today. By the end of the episode, I want to talk about two defensive ends in the NFL who are on the market, Melvin Ingram and Yannick Ngakoue. Apparently for Yannick Ngakoue, a trade is happening within the next 24 hours. I'll talk about some potential teams there. I'll also be breaking down another NFL team schedule. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I'll be telling that. That's at the very end of the episode. And pretty much for the rest of the episodes could be very similar to the last one. The NBA playoffs are still going. A lot of teams getting wins, a lot of teams losing, falling behind in the series. Today was the first day that some teams fell behind 2-0 in some series. We'll break down everything NBA playoffs over these next few segments here, but we're going to start off, of course, with the Los Angeles Lakers and their first game against the Portland Trail Blazers. That happened, I believe, now 2 days ago when you're listening to this. And I predicted it, folks. I told you when I said, last episode, I said, I believe that the Portland Trail Blazers are going to win game one of this series. Now, I don't think it was that surprising, and I wasn't surprised at all when I saw that the Portland Trail Blazers, and I watched with my own eyes, how they won 100-93 against the Los Angeles Lakers in Game 1. Of course, some quick stats from the Portland side. We had Carmelo Anthony with only 11, Nurkic with 16, Lillard with 34, and CJ McCollum with 21. Now, some of these stats are important, and I will get to it later. But again, I told you this. The Lakers haven't been playing well the entire bubble ever since the NBA playoffs have started, or the NBA season has resumed. They were 4-6 in their last 10 games, and they were very sloppy wins. They were very close wins. And again, I told you that this team is two people. This team is Anthony Davis and it is LeBron James, and that is not going to cut it enough in the playoffs. It might win you a first-round series. Hell, it might even win you a second-round series, but it cannot win you a conference finals, and it certainly can't win you an NBA championship. And this is what we're seeing for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I'm not going to go out here and predict what some other people believe, which is that the Trailblazers win the series. I told you from the start, I think this series is going to be a lot closer than people think. A lot of people thought Lakers in 4, Lakers in 5. I have Lakers in 6, maybe even 7. And Game 1 just proves what I've been saying all along, that the Portland Trailblazers are playing the best basketball of their entire season. They had a poor regular season before the hiatus. They came back, I believe, at the 10th seed. They had to get all the way up to 8th to make the playoffs, and they did it. Damian Lillard is on an absolute tear. CJ McCollum is playing some of the best basketball of his career as well. And guys like Carmelo Anthony came back from the hiatus in shape and willing to play defense. And of course, Carmelo now appears to be one of the best 3-and-D players in the entire league. Again, this is how the Portland Trailblazers play. They are the best team right now, or one of the hottest teams right now in the entire National Basketball Association. They are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the entire NBA, and they have one of the most dynamic backcourts in the NBA as well, with CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard. And what have I been continuing to say on this show? The biggest weakness for the Los Angeles Lakers is perimeter defense, specifically players who can't defend other, point of attack, really high level guards. And I said, if teams, again, there were teams in the bubble that were giving them hard times, teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, teams in the East, in these like regular season, finishing out the regular season games. And I said, what do you think's going to happen when they go against a CJ McCollum, a Damian Lillard, a James Harden, or Russell Westbrook? They're going to get torched. And again, we saw it. CJ McCollum with 21, and he didn't even play particularly well. And of course, Damian Lillard with 34. If I'm a Lakers fan, I'm concerned for a couple of reasons. One, I'll start off with the thing right now. I would not absolutely panic if I were a Laker fan in regards to this season. If your expectation was for a championship for the Los Angeles Lakers this year, then I would be panicking, because this is just giving you a small glimpse of how some really good basketball teams can really exploit the Los Angeles Lakers led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I wouldn't be panicking unless I thought they were supposed to win a championship. And again, I'm not out here going to go on a limb and say that the Trailblazers are going to win this series. I don't think LeBron James and Anthony Davis allow this series to really fall out of their midst or fall out of their grips. I think the Lakers will win Game 2 of this series, which will be tonight when you're listening to this. I think they will get it done. But again, this will be a close series. Damian Lillard came to play, and he didn't just come here to make the playoffs. He wants to win a championship. He made the conference finals last year. Pretty much this exact same team made the conference finals last year, except maybe the addition of Carmelo Anthony and a guy like Hassan Whiteside, and immediately kind of the emergence of Gary Trent Jr. as well. This team came to play. Damian Lillard is not a first-round exit type of guy. Again, he made the conference finals last season, and he wants a championship for his small market city in Portland that he's been loyal and dedicated to his entire NBA career. And if this is how they're going to do it. They're going to shoot the hell out of the ball from three, and they're going to make you pay from the outside, and they're going to dare you to stop them from these 30-plus foot shots, and that's what they're doing to the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers don't have anybody to guard Dame Lillard. Let's be honest, they do not have anybody to guard Damian Lillard, and they don't have anybody to guard CJ McCollum either, unless somehow LeBron James would switch on one of them. But even then, I still think it's a little bit of a mismatch due to just pure speed and age and, kind of where they are in their careers. LeBron isn't the greatest defender, period, anymore. Obviously, he has his moments where he turns it off and turns it on. But again, going back to that point, turning off and turning on, I told you that the Lakers weren't going to be able to do this. Everyone just said, oh, they're not playing bad, they're just turning it off, they're resting, they want to go to the playoffs healthy, yada yada this, yada yada that. But now we're here at the playoffs, and the Lakers couldn't turn it on like everybody was telling me that they were going to do. And this is what's going to happen. There is no turning off and turning on really in NBA basketball. The only NBA team that I could frequently remember having the ability to maybe turn it off and turn it on, at least from an offensive standpoint, was maybe the Golden State Warriors teams with Kevin Durant at their peak. But even then, in the game of basketball, it isn't turning off and turning on. It's either you have it or you don't that day. And I get it. You can be streaky, you can be inconsistent. But the only guys that can maybe consider turning it off and turning it on is maybe LeBron and not even Anthony Davis. I think it would just be LeBron James. And this team does not have the capabilities of winning a championship. They are going to struggle to beat Portland in the first round. They might lose in the second round to a team like the Denver Nuggets or the Houston Rockets, or they might be able to quickly get out of that second round series. It's not really ideal. I wouldn't be positive that they would be able to, get out of a second round series. But there's a chance that they could against a team like the Denver Nuggets or the Houston Rockets. But in all actuality, they do not have a point of attack defender to go against those guys like guards, like guys like Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook, and CJ McCollum, and guys all like that. And it would be difficult for them to make it past even a second round series when there are guys like Jamal Murray on some certain teams. And again, if they ended up facing the Rockets, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and there are also some guys on the Clippers like I've talked about. Paul George is a shooting guard. Who is guarding him? LeBron James, unclear, unknown. I wouldn't bet on him guarding him. I think he would more match up against Kawhi Leonard, but you never know. Again, the Lakers just don't have what it takes, man. They're not deep enough. They don't have the point of attack defense. And when there's a shooter's league, and that's how this league works, you need guys who can also defend shooters, not just shoot the hell out of the ball. And the Lakers don't have that right now. And here's the scary part for the Lakers in this series. Again, I do not think the Lakers are going to lose this series. Would I be surprised if they lost this series? Maybe a little bit, only because of LeBron James's pedigree and his resume and everything that has to go along with that. It wouldn't absolutely shock me or knock my socks off to think that, hey, there is a chance that they could lose the series. Because, again, everything I've been mentioning with the point-of-attack defense, and this is just a bad matchup from an offensive-defensive standpoint. But there are two reasons why I would be concerned. One of them being Anthony Davis. So Anthony Davis was absolutely phenomenal just from a box score standpoint, as he always is. He had 28, 11, and 1. He shot 8 of 24 from the field, 12 of 17 from the free throw line. This is the problem, though. This is what I've consistently seen with Anthony Davis, and some other people have been saying it on the social media, or on social media and some, NBA circles as well. And does Anthony Davis have any dog in him? Is he a guy that's going to consistently show up in the fourth quarter and give you 8 to 12 point fourth quarters in order for them to actually have a legitimate chance at winning a championship and consistently beating bad teams or even good teams in the NBA playoffs? And I don't think he has that, considering he dropped 25 points in the first half and then completely ghosted pretty much the last 2 quarters of the entire game. Again, in a game 1 of a playoff series when they're going against a team, the Portland Trailblazers, who are playing the best level of basketball they've had in their entire maybe career for some guys like CJ McCollum and some other guys like Gary Trent Jr. You need Anthony Davis to not just be really good in the first half. Again, he had 20, I think he either had 23 or 25 in the first half. You need him to keep that same energy when it comes all the way down to the fourth quarter. And he's just not doing that. He wasn't doing it in the regular season. He wasn't doing it in the bubble regular season when it was finishing then, and he hasn't been doing it in the playoffs. And this is the problem with Anthony Davis, because this isn't just a problem now for the Los Angeles Lakers, it's a problem for the future. Because when LeBron James either retires or leaves the Lakers to go for a final stint in his career, maybe in Cleveland or wherever his son plays, or if he just flat out retires, Anthony Davis, I believe, is going to be a Los Angeles Laker for a long time. He is the future of the Los Angeles Lakers. He will be the future centerpiece, who they will try to pair up with some sort of shooting guard, I believe, or some other superstar for, the Anthony Davis era of Los Angeles Laker basketball. But if he is a guy who's not going to show up in the fourth quarter of playoff games, and again, people have been saying this almost since his New Orleans days, there's no dog, there's no assertiveness, he's more passive, he doesn't want to be the one taking the final shot, yada yada this. And I typically try not to buy into those those narratives, because there's different excuses, they get double teamed, things like that. But I watched the game last night, Anthony Davis didn't take enough shots in the second half of the game. And of course, he was absolutely unguardable in the first half. And there is nobody on the Portland Trailblazers, or there might not even be anybody in the entire NBA who could consistently guard Anthony Davis for an entire game and hold him under 20 points. I don't think there is a guy like that in the NBA. So why aren't you taking more shots in the second half? Why aren't you being assertive? Because there are moments, there are definitely stretches, even when LeBron James is on the floor, where Anthony Davis, when he gets hot, is the best player on the Los Angeles Lakers for just short moments. Maybe it's for 3 minutes. Maybe it's for 5 minutes. Maybe it's for only 1 minute. But we don't see it that often because he's not assertive enough. He's not the guy taking those final shots. Quickly, for the next couple of minutes or so, on LeBron. He obviously played fantastic. And he's obviously assertive, and he did everything he could. Again, in 41 minutes, he had 23 points, 17 rebounds, and 16 assists. 9 of 20 from the field, 4 of 7 from 4 of 7 from the free throw line. Didn't shoot well from 3. Only 4 turnovers for 16 assists. That's a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. He played his heart out. He played phenomenal. But I hate to say it, he's not getting a championship this year. There's no way he's going to be able to do it. And again, I'm not going to be shocked if he gets bounced in the second round, to no fault of his own. And I don't want to play the LeBron needs help card, but LeBron James needs help if he's going to win a championship, specifically in this Western Conference, and specifically in the NBA when there's teams like the Los Angeles Clippers who are stacked, and there's teams like the 8th seed in the West, the Portland Trailblazers, who are giving them hella trouble. It's just how it's going to work, okay? I understand that he has Anthony Davis, and everybody says that should automatically win LeBron James a championship, but in reality it's not, because this team is not good. Let's be real here. It is not a 100% from top to bottom a good basketball team. This team overperformed in the regular season. This team should not be the number 1 seed in the West. The Clippers should be. They're not. They don't play as much as a team, as a unit, as a team like the Nuggets do, as a team like the Portland Trailblazers do. And again, I understand they were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, but that's an overperform. This team has never been great. This team has never been elite. LeBron James has really made it look a lot better than it is, even with the addition of Anthony Davis. Because if you take LeBron James off this team, what is Anthony Davis doing consistently? Is he leading them to a top 4 seed in the Western Conference? You take LeBron James off this team. It's the exact team that they have right now, and Anthony Davis is the number 1 guy. Sure, Anthony Davis' stats might go up, but let's be real here. Does that team be a top 4 seed in the West? I don't think so. It's certainly not the number 1 team in the West. I would put them maybe at a 6, maybe in the 7th seed. Is this team without LeBron James as good as the Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, Dallas Mavericks, who are the 7th seed, who, as I'm recording this right now, are giving the Los Angeles Clippers a run for their money right now as I'm recording this? The Mavericks are up by 10 with only 2.5 minutes left, so they're about to beat the Los Angeles Clippers. Do you think this team without LeBron James could do that? I don't think so. I think LeBron James has once again, pretty much wherever he's gone, besides maybe a couple of those Miami years, has made teams look better than they actually are. Has made supporting cast members look better than they actually are. And yes, I understand that people are sick and tired of this excuse, but it is true. LeBron James needs help, and they're going to have to revamp this team in the offseason yet again. Anthony Davis is a long-term piece? Sure. LeBron James is a long-term piece? Of course. But guys like Danny Green, who can't hit an open three to save their life, KCP, who has 1 point, come on, man. You're the number 1 seed in the West. You need to be able to take care of business against a team like the Trailblazers, even though they have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, because you're going to be out of gas, and specifically, LeBron James is going to be out of gas as soon as those Western Conference Finals hit. And again, I'm not going to be surprised if they get bounced in the second round. I think this series, at least the first round, is going to go 6 or 7. Wouldn't even be surprised if they got bounced in the first round. In all honesty, it would surprise me maybe a little bit because of how good LeBron is. But again, LeBron did everything he could last night. Anthony Davis has to be better in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter. And man, do these shooters and these role players need to step up for the Lakers. Otherwise, they have no chance at a championship. And I think their championship dreams and hopes and aspirations might already be dead. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we're going to continue talking about the NBA playoffs, about games that happened yesterday, games that happened tonight. We'll get into all of it right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I really do appreciate it, and we here at the GSMC Sports team really do appreciate it as well. I just finished talking about the Los Angeles Lakers and how, like I predicted, they lost Game 1 to the Portland Trail Blazers. I really wasn't caught off guard by them losing Game 1. Again, I don't think LeBron James and Anthony Davis will allow them to lose Game 2 or maybe even necessarily the entire series. However, I do believe this series will go to 6, maybe even 7 games. It's just the mismatch for the Los Angeles Lakers with the attacking guards that the Portland Trail Blazer has are just a little bit too overwhelming to be able to at least sweep them, or of course to maybe not let the series get into extended games. Again, I think this series is a lot closer than a lot of people think. And shout out Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum for just being who they've always been, which is one of the top teams in the West. Don't let their seeding as the 8th seed fool you. And also, don't get it twisted. This is not who the Los Angeles Lakers wanted to face. They wanted totally the Memphis Grizzlies or maybe even the Phoenix Suns to get that 8th seed, or the Pelicans probably, instead of the Portland Trail Blazers. The Portland Trail Blazers have playoff experience and a superstar in Damian Lillard and another star player in CJ McCollum, who all have playoff experience. Again, they went to the Western Conference Finals last year. I want to stick now with the NBA and talk about some of the other series. And honestly, the only game that I was absolutely shocked by the result, when the playoffs kind of have already started, it'll be a couple days ago now when you're listening to this, was the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks lost their first round matchup, the game 1 of their series against the Orlando Magic. Now, I'll tell you why. Because while I am not the biggest believer in the Milwaukee Bucks, again, I have said that they're probably going to get eliminated in the second round, in my opinion. That's just how I view it. I think the Miami Heat will be able to beat them in the second round, and I'll talk about the Heat as well in this segment, and I'll talk about the Bucks continuously. But I expected them honestly to sweep the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic are not a good team. I believe they're under 500 when you actually look at it. Yeah, they're 33-40, 8th in the Eastern Conference. Again, so they made the playoffs, but again, they're not a good basketball team. They've lost more games than they won. And the Bucks had the best record in the NBA this year with 56 wins, and they lost by 12, 122-110. And this is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, the Milwaukee Bucks are traditionally considered as a defensive team. They are a big, physical, paint-defending team, and they let a guy, Nikola Vucevic, walk absolutely all over them, Terrence Ross as well, Evan Fournier. So they just completely let them walk all over them. And again, this is also a Magic team that's playing without its best player, Aaron Gordon, maybe its not his best player. I think Vucevic is probably the best player on the Magic. One of their best players, Aaron Gordon, also one of their best defenders in Jonathan Isaac, who probably would have had the Giannis Antetokounmpo or Chris Middleton assignment this entire series. He's not playing either. So when you're missing some of their best players, the Bucks should have absolutely steamrolled the Orlando Magic, at least in Game 1 and probably the entire series. Now they're down 0-1, and this is where I'm going to get into this, because this is a sign of things to come for the Milwaukee Bucks, in my opinion. They do not have what it takes to beat some of these teams. Again, the Milwaukee Bucks are a very good regular season team, okay? They have maybe the best regular season player in the NBA besides James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo. They have a guy in Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez. They have veterans. They have a good mix. Again, they have what it looks like, at least on the outside, as a championship caliber team. But they are not this completely unstoppable, unbeatable team that some of these other quote-unquote super teams have been in the past, like, the Golden State Warriors or even the Miami Heatles, right? They are beatable. There are matchups that you can exploit against the Milwaukee Bucks, and there are a lot of teams that have the ability to not stop Giannis, but potentially contain Giannis in a series, a team like the Miami Heat, which I'll get to later on in this segment. And also, the Bucks don't have the best offense in the NBA. Again, this is all about Giannis Antetokounmpo, and we're seeing yet again what we've seen consistently, which is the Chris Middleton factor, because he is the X factor for this team. Because we already know what Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to do in the playoffs. He had 31 against the Orlando Magic. He did everything he possibly could to beat a bad Orlando Magic team. It was the other guys that needed to step up. Now, people were kind of coming at Brook Lopez for only having 5 points. I wouldn't be too worried about that. He's a veteran with playoff experience. He'll get it fixed. That's not going to be a continuous thing all series, and he's known for pretty stepping up in the playoffs. Grant Hill had 16 points. You're not going to get that every single night. The Bucks need to take advantage of that and get a win there. Bledsoe also had 15. Wes Matthews with 10. Chris Middleton is the X factor for this team, because he is the difference, in my opinion, between them getting knocked out in the second round or potentially winning the NBA Finals. If Chris Middleton looks like in the playoffs what he does usually in the regular season, then this team has a legitimate chance at an NBA championship. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, he just does not consistently show up in the NBA playoffs. And when that happens, you just rely too much on Giannis Antetokounmpo, too much on some of these other guys like Brook Lopez, and he'll get doubled, and there's other big men that can kind of go out there. The Heat have an athletic big man in Bam Adebayo who can come out there and kind of stretch defend, things like that. But again, when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, there's just not a really big chance that Chris Middleton is going to be able to consistently perform in the playoffs like we're used to. We know that this is what Chris Middleton usually does. And again, it's complicated because I like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think he is maybe the best player in the NBA. But again, I just don't see how this team can consistently win in the second round and beyond. But again, it's tough to think about, because again, Chris Middleton is interesting because it's not like he necessarily shoots bad when he has these types of games, right? He doesn't necessarily shoot bad. He had 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. He shot 4 of 12 from the field, not great. 4 of 6 from the free throw line, and 3 of 6 from the 3-point line, or 2 of 6 from the 3-point line. So he didn't shoot absolutely terrible, but the problem is he just doesn't shoot enough when he has these types of games. And again, we've seen this time and again in the playoffs, and in these big games for Chris Middleton, where I don't know if he can be the second best player on a championship team, no matter how great Giannis Antetokounmpo is. And this is where it's going to become an issue, because the likelihood is that if the Milwaukee Bucks get bounced, I don't think, again, if you're a Bucks fan, I wouldn't panic and say that they're going to, lose to the Orlando Magic in the first round series. That's just not going to happen. They're going to figure it out. They're going to definitely beat them. I expect maybe the Bucks to. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the next 4 games of this series. But if they do get bounced in the second round, and some of these teams are starting to exploit some matchups against a guy like Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, what are the chances that Giannis Antetokounmpo sticks around for the year 2021 and decides to stick around here in Milwaukee? It's going to be interesting to see, because I'm not that confident that he would want to stay here, or stay there if he was bounced in the early rounds, especially if he lost in the first round of the Magic. Again, I doubt that will happen. But again, it seemed like in the second round, maybe even the conference finals, what is it going to take for Giannis to 100% be all in on the Milwaukee Bucks in the future? And that really is the interesting question. But again, if you're a Bucks fan, don't stress out about this series. They'll figure it out. They'll get it in. It's just annoying because Giannis might be a little bit tired once you get to the later half of the series, or the conference finals, the second round, because again, he's been playing so many minutes. Again, it'll be interesting to see. I think the Milwaukee Bucks will be able to definitely win this series. But again, a second round matchup against the Miami Heat is really interesting to me because there are ways to contain Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Miami Heat have players that they could potentially do it. Now, the Heat are not going to stop Giannis and hold him under 20 points. Nobody can do that. And Giannis will probably still get his 25 to 30 points a game. But when you have guys like Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, even Jimmy Butler, if you want to put him on Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bam Adebayo, guys like Derrick Jones Jr., who are tall and athletic as well, who could come in off the bench, even Kelly Olynyk. He's not the greatest defender, but he's got the size to probably, stay in front of Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe for a little bit. There's just so many switchability guys. There's so much positionlessness, and there's so much big, strong athleticism on a team like the Miami Heat. And another team that has that is the Toronto Raptors, and the Boston Celtics have that a little bit as well. So again, this is not going to be an easy path to the NBA Finals that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to have if he is going to get there. Unlike maybe some of those years when LeBron James was on the Cleveland Cavaliers, how the East was kind of a cakewalk, and it was just kind of sweep, 5-game series, and then you're in the finals. That's not how it's going to be for the Eastern Conference this year for the Milwaukee Bucks. Again, I have them getting bounced in the second round, and a lot of you guys called me crazy, because again, I understand the Bucks had 56 wins this season. They were the number one seed in the entirety of the NBA, the entirety of it, right? Nobody was better. They had all the wins, more than the Lakers, more than the Clippers, more than, the Raptors, more than the Celtics. And they shouldn't get bounced in the second round. But you're starting to see it. You're starting to see some teams exploit them and have a lot of, this defense. Giannis is a great defender, and I think Brook Lopez is a pretty good paint defender as well. I think he's a great rim protector. I don't think he's, athletic enough to, go all the way out there. But if you're letting the Orlando Magic drop 122 on you, what do you think Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, all of these other guys are going to do in the second round? Or if you do make it past the Miami Heat and you got to go to place the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, what do you think Jason Tatum's going to do to you? What do you think Jaylen Brown's going to do? Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, if he comes back healthy enough from the ankle injury that he had. Again, it's just, I don't see it with this team. And again, I believe in Giannis Antetokounmpo. He can absolutely be the best player on a championship team, and he's probably, if at worst, the second best player in the entire NBA if you want to put LeBron James higher than him. But it comes down to his surrounding cast. And the Bucks could be in trouble in the future because, again, if they don't make it out, or if they don't really get to the finals, I think if you made it to an NBA Finals this year, right, and let's say they lost to the Clippers or the Lakers, if you want to throw them in there, I think Giannis Antetokounmpo would still be all in on Milwaukee, willing to sign the extension, and his future wouldn't be in doubt. But if you get bounced in the first round or even the second round, again, they're not going to get bounced in the first round, but if you get bounced in the second round to the Miami Heat, you don't even make it to a conference finals like you did last year, I think. Then you're getting into some really, really interesting conversations when there are going to be teams like the Miami Heat, maybe even some teams out there in the Western Conference who have the money, the Toronto Raptors as well, to make a big play for Giannis Antetokounmpo and can surround him with a better cast. Miami Heat, for example, have a ton of shooters to surround him with, so do the Toronto Raptors. To where Giannis might want to be considering, hey, can I actually win here? Can I actually win a consistent championship? Or are we just a good regular season team? It's going to be interesting to see how the whole situation plays out. But again, if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, do not stress too much about this series in particular. I think the only thing that it could have a long-term effect on is, again, maybe fatigue if you do make it, if the Bucks did make it to like the, later part of the playoffs, the conference finals, the finals, when you have to play a 5-6 game series maybe in the first round, that's not what you want. The only reason I would put panic mode on for the Milwaukee Bucks is if they fell down 0-2 in this series. I don't think it's going to happen. When you're watching this, I believe they would have played today, and I'm expecting a blowout win for Milwaukee. I don't think Giannis is going to allow them to lose multiple games in a row in the first round to an Orlando Magic team that's under 500, and I think only had 33 wins when they had a 56 win team. And I also expect Chris Middleton to have a little bit of a bounce back game because, again, Chris Middleton feasts on the bad teams, and he feeds off mismatches when there's a guy who's not as tall, not as long, not as athletic. Just last night when he had the 14 points and really just couldn't get anything going, and he wasn't shooting well, and he wasn't also shooting enough. Similar to how Anthony Davis, when I keep saying he has no dog in him, he doesn't shoot in the second half, he's not airing the big moments. Chris Middleton kind of does the same thing. And in order to win an NBA championship, you need to have your superstar player, and your second player also has to be ready at any moment to deliver the big shot. You need two clutch players on your team like that. A lot of teams have that. In Boston, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and Jason Tatum can all do that. From Miami, we've seen Jimmy Butler do it. We've seen Bam Adebayo do it. We've also seen Goran Dragic do it if you've been watching. We've seen Duncan Robinson do it. And even in a couple of moments, we've seen Tyler Hero do it. For Milwaukee, who have you seen done it besides Giannis Antetokounmpo? That is the problem that I have, because all of these games are going to be close once you get into the end part of the playoffs. I think a Heat series would go to 7. I think a series against Boston would go to 7. I think even if they went to the NBA Finals against the Clippers, that would go to 6 or 7. So who is going to be the guy that's going to be delivering the clutch shots when Giannis gets doubled on the elbow and he has to pass out? Again, I just don't necessarily see with this Milwaukee Bucks team, but if they made it to an NBA Finals, I think that'd be enough to convince Giannis Antetokounmpo to stay. But if you get bounced in the second round, then you have some really interesting conversations, and those rumors are going to pick up. There's going to be more jersey swaps on Twitter, all that stuff for teams like Miami, teams like Toronto, teams like the Knicks, teams like the Lakers. And the chatter is going to get a little bit longer. And how much longer until Giannis Antetokounmpo seriously considers it? How many more times does he have to get knocked down in the first or second round before he really considers, can I win as a Milwaukee Buck, a championship, that is? So it's going to be really interesting to see. All right, we're going to take a short break. On the other side of the break, we're going to be talking about, continuing the conversation about the NBA playoffs. I want to talk about the Celtics. I want to talk about the Heat. I want to talk about the 76ers and maybe some other teams if we have time as well. We'll talk about all of those teams right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and to continuing to be listening to the show. We really, really do appreciate it. I just finished talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and their surprising loss in Game 1 against the Orlando Magic, something I did not see coming. It was really the only playoff result that has happened since really the playoffs have started, where I was legitimately shocked where that happened. Again, I thought they were going to roll the Orlando Magic and win pretty convincingly the next 4 games. Again, I still think they win the series 100%. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Bucks went on and win the next 4. The only reason why I would press the panic button if I was a Bucks fan is if they did lose Game 2 and went down 0-2. I would still pick the Bucks to win the series, but again, that would just be something that would absolutely blow my mind, and it would be concerning if you are a Giannis Antetokounmpo fan, and maybe those rumblings and those rumors start to, pick up a little bit on if he's going to stay or leave for 2021 when he hits the free agent open market. Something to keep an eye on. I want to talk about a team that I talked about a little bit in the last segment, the Miami Heat. I've said this and I'll say it again. They're going to make a deep playoff run. I really do believe this team is going at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I really do believe that they have a legitimate chance at not only, potentially, making a deep playoff run this year, but also being set up for the future as one of those teams that could build a super team or, improve their team a lot and become one of those championship favorites as soon as next season. So Jimmy Butler did an interview with Rachel Nichols on The Jump on ESPN, and they were talking about a little bit of things like, here, and there's a quote from Brian Windhorst as well. Jimmy Butler pretty much said in the interview and also the reports that were coming out of what he was saying in his camp that he not only do the Miami Heat believe that they can win a championship this year and make a deep playoff run, but they're going to be set up for future, making a really big trade acquisition as soon as maybe this offseason. And I want to tell you who that player is. It's Donovan Mitchell. That is who the Heat want. That is who Pat Riley has his eye on. Donovan Mitchell is a friend of Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade has called him a mentor. Dwayne Wade said he's been a mentor to him. They play a very similar type game. And of course, Pat Riley probably sees a young Dwayne Wade in him. And if there is a kind of a weakness at the Miami Heat right now, I think they would use a really young, explosive guard. I think Tyler Hero is really, really good, and I think he could be a potential star. I don't know if I would label him as a potential superstar. The only comparison that I see a lot to him is like a guy like Devin Booker. I could see him being a poor man's version of Devin Booker. He is really good. Don't get me wrong. Tyler Hero is phenomenal. And there's not that many players I would trade Tyler Hero for. For example, I wouldn't trade Tyler Hero for a guy like Victor Oladipo. I would trade a guy like Tyler Hero for Donovan Mitchell because I don't think Tyler Hero will ever be on Donovan Mitchell's level. Just in the future wise. And again, that's no knock on Tyler Hero. He's a phenomenal player. I think he'll make first team all rookie. He's great, and he's performing in the playoffs as we've seen in the Heat playoff games so far. He's been phenomenal for them. But again, Donovan Mitchell is just on another level. I think that the Heat really want to go after him. They want to package a guy like Hero, and maybe also, Kendrick Nunn and a guy like Kelly Olynyk and some picks in order to get Donovan Mitchell out of Utah and bring him to Miami. And again, have a starting lineup, what it would appear to look like at least, of Mitchell, Butler, Robinson, Jay Crowder, and then eventually Jay Crowder or whoever they want starting at the 4, and Bam Adebayo. That, in my opinion, would make the Heat first or second in the East, right up there with the Milwaukee Bucks, depending on what they do in the offseason, and also looking forward to next season as well, the Brooklyn Nets, who I've talked about a lot as well, with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving kind of coming back in full swing. It'll be interesting to see how they look as well. And I think I don't know if the Heat are going to get Donovan Mitchell. I don't know if Donovan Mitchell's going to want out of Utah. There's been some rumblings and some reports from guys like Jalen Rose and other NBA circles that don't be surprised if Donovan Mitchell doesn't sign the extension. He might want out of Utah. And to be honest, when you watch the Utah games, they won their second game of the series, by the way, so them and Denver are tied 1-1. It doesn't seem that Donovan Mitchell's having fun. That Utah team isn't playing like a team like the Miami Heat is. And it'll be interesting to see how that situation plays itself out. But as for the Heat this year, there's guys that are stepping up, and I was trying to think of what teams have benefited the most from the layover and the hiatus and the fact that there's some well-rested. And I think the Miami Heat might have benefited the most for one reason only. 2 players, Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic. So Jimmy Butler is a veteran. He's played a lot of minutes in his career, going back to his days with Tom Thibodeau in the Chicago Bulls, and he also played with Tom Thibodeau in Minnesota. So I wish there's a phrase, Thibodeau minutes, where people accuse Tom Thibodeau of running players into the ground with all the minutes that they play, right? Everything like that. And of course, he played a lot of minutes in Philly last year as well, and he's playing a lot of minutes for the Miami Heat. He is their main guy, of course, so he's playing a lot of minutes. He's playing in those mid-30s, sometimes even to 40 minutes a game once we get into the playoffs and things like that. And it does take some wear and tear, and not to mention Jimmy Butler is 30, almost 31 years old. And when you do that for a consistent amount of time, you're going to run out of gas, specifically when you get towards the end of the season. And we were kind of seeing that with Jimmy Butler when he was, coming back into the kind of the end before hiatus. The Heat were kind of slipping up, and Jimmy Butler was not shooting well. He was shooting 24% from 3. When that happens to a player that can usually make threes, they're tired. They're not getting as much lift up on their shot. They're front rimming a lot of shots. And that's what was happening to Jimmy Butler. This long hiatus, Jimmy Butler comes back. He's uber aggressive. He's shooting better from 3. He's hit 3-point shots consistently in the playoffs so far, and he's been back to this sort of assertive, dominant Jimmy Butler that we saw in Philly last year, in Chicago. And honestly, we didn't really see it this level of Jimmy Butler, in the regular season. He had 28 points in the first game against the Indiana Pacers that they won. And of course, Jimmy has scored that, and he showed, there were a couple games where this kind of aggressive playoff type Jimmy Butler came in. Games against Philadelphia, I remember, games against the Lakers, games against the Clippers. But now that we're in the playoff Jimmy Butler is a different animal, and he's almost been kind of reserving some energy, specifically on the offensive end, passing a little bit less, being a little bit more dominant, getting to the line a ton. I don't think anybody gets to the line more than Jimmy Butler, besides obviously probably James Harden, but it's kind of ridiculous to see how often he gets to the line. Again, he's been uber aggressive and super dominant in that first playoff game, and of course they've just surrounded him with shooters. Another guy, Goran Dragic, has really helped out from the long hiatus. He's almost 34 years old, I believe. He's a veteran. He was off the bench for a majority of this season, and something interesting kind of happened. They moved Kendrick Nunn to the bench and brought Goran Dragic in, and Kendrick Nunn didn't play a single minute of the playoff game, which is a situation to keep your eye on. I think they're kind of done with him, and they're probably going to move him next year. But it's going to be an interesting conversation of what his trade value is if he doesn't play in the playoffs. Dragic was playing for the first time in his career off the bench the entire season, and now as soon as the playoffs start, he's back in the starting lineup, and the Miami Heat starting lineup with him in there is a plus 33. This is the interesting question. Was this on purpose? did Coach Eric Spoelstra have Goran Dragic come off the bench the entire season just so he would be rested and then, kind of turn back the clock a little bit to prime Goran Dragic when he was, completely here in the playoffs? And I think a combination of that and the hiatus has served him well. He had 25 points in their first playoff game, and he's been absolutely phenomenal for them. He's a closer. He's clutch. I was talking about how the Milwaukee Bucks don't have a ton of guys, in my opinion, who have the ability to shoot big-time shots late in games and hit the clutch shots in the fourth quarter. The Heat have a ton of those guys. They have Dragic, they have Butler, they have Bam, they have Duncan Robinson has hit multiple three-pointers in the fourth quarter. And also Tyler Hero has shown some moments where he can have some clutch shots as well. But to have Goran Dragic as these full legs sort of guy, he's looking like an elite point guard. He had 25 points in the first game. I expect he'll do more in the playoffs as well. It's really interesting to see that because he presents a whole new dimension. If he's consistently scoring 20-plus from the starting point guard position, Jimmy Butler has ramped it up a notch, and he'll start getting like almost 20 to 25 a game in the playoffs. Bam Adebayo doing his thing, Duncan Robinson doing his thing from three. The Heat are a really dangerous team, and again, I expect them to knock out the Bucks in the second round. That's just how I see it going. I see an Eastern Conference Finals of Celtics Heat where the Celtics would win in about 6 or 7 games. That's how I see it, and I don't see how that would change for me. Again, the Heat look like a dangerous team, not just now, but in the future as well. And keep an eye on that Donovan Mitchell situation down there in Utah. Now, I want to talk about 2 other Eastern Conference teams, and then also a Western Conference team before we take one final break and I switch to the NFL. Philly's down 0-2 against the Boston Celtics, and I'm going to be honest with you, I thought this series would be a little bit closer than it is. I thought that the Celtics would win in 5 games, so I'm kind of on track for that, and that's pretty much right. I'm assuming Philly will get a game, but I didn't expect these games to be blowouts. In both of these games, they've lost by double digits now, for Philadelphia, that is, against the Celtics. And the only player who's really playing well for Philly is Joel Embiid, and there was a kind of a screen capture last night of Joel Embiid having his hands in his face, both of them, and he was clearly discouraged after having a phenomenal night. I'll check the stats real quick right now. He's been incredible, but in all honesty, I don't see how this team stays together. I've talked about it before, and I'll say it again, that Philly's going to break up at the end of the season. I'm really confident in that now. I don't think that they're going to keep both Simmons and Embiid together. They just completely lack shooting. Again, Embiid had 34-10 and 3. Like, absolutely ridiculous stuff. Al Horford, his contract is a mess. He only had 4 points. Tobias Harris, he's owed almost the same, I think the most amount of guaranteed money in the NBA, maybe behind Damian Lillard, and he only had 13 points. He shot 4-15 from the field. There's no spacing. The second best player, in my opinion, on this team right now is Josh Richardson. He had 18 points, and he could be a piece you could keep for the long-term future. But Philly's going to have to decide who they're going to want to keep long-term, Simmons or Embiid. And now, is there a way, I was trying to think about this, is there a way for Simmons and Embiid to, coincide together if you want to completely rebuild this team? I guess in theory, if you got enough shooters, you could still have Embiid and Simmons, but even then, their games, Ben Simmons relies so much on driving to the paint, and Embiid's game so much is just standing in the paint and clearing out. I think you still need to have one of those two. Who is Philly going to pick? I'm not sure, but I don't even know if Joel Embiid is going to give them a choice at this point. Watch out for Joel Embiid. He might request a trade in the offseason. It's just, we have to start telling it like it is. He's discouraged. He is not happy. He has not been happy in Philadelphia since he was playing with Jimmy Butler in Philly. It doesn't appear he has a lot of friends on the team. Again, he's super discouraged. He had his hands in his face at the end of last game. He's the only player consistently performing. He's reaching his prime now. I believe he's 27 years old. He still has plenty of years left, obviously, but I think he's going to want to start to win. Not only win, but probably have fun playing basketball again, something he doesn't appear to be doing right now. And Joel Embiid, with his personality and his energy and everything like that, he deserves to be in a happy situation. That's where we want him to be. So I keep saying this all along that, Philly's going to have to make the choice, Embiid or Simmons. I'm not so positive Joel Embiid's going to even give them that choice. It wouldn't surprise me at all if after they get rid of, their coach, Brett Brown, that Joel Embiid comes out and wants a trade. Some teams I could see being really interested in him. Some people were saying the Miami Heat on Twitter. I don't see the basketball fit between him and Bam Adebayo. I think that if you were the Philadelphia 76ers, you also wouldn't want to trade in the Miami Heat because you already gave them Jimmy Butler. But the Heat might offer the best trade package for what you want to do around Ben Simmons, again, with shooters like Tyler Hero or maybe even Duncan Robinson, of course Kendrick Nunn as well. Again, I don't see it happening with the Miami Heat. I think they have their eye on Donovan Mitchell or Bradley Beal, some of those shooting guards. I think that's who they want because they like their big man, Bam Adebayo. And I don't see a fit between him and Joel Embiid. A team that I like a lot to potentially snag Joel Embiid is a team like the New York Knicks or the Chicago Bulls, two teams that are completely rebuilding. They need a face of the franchise. I really want to see Joel Embiid on the New York Knicks. And again, the New York Knicks are not a good team. They're not a well-run team. but Joel Embiid's personality and everything like that would fit so well with the city of New York. Would he want to go to the Knicks? I'm not sure. But could the Knicks maybe build a team around him? Potentially. I like their hire of head coach Tom Thibodeau. I wouldn't count on it, but there's not a lot of contending teams that are out there looking for a center right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what team would be after Joel Embiid if he were to hit the market. There'd be plenty of suitors with Ben Simmons. Any of these teams, the Knicks, the Chicago Bulls, looking for like a complete franchise player. You could see that as well with teams with a ton of shooters. As well, you could there's many teams that could potentially go after Ben Simmons. I think if Philly had to pick, they would choose Ben Simmons because of the age factor and probably the injury risk. But Joel Embiid's also been the face of that Philadelphia organization for a long time, and who knows how it would go. But again, he's just not having fun playing basketball. He's got his hands in his face. He looks completely discouraged. It's an ugly sight right now to watch Philly. Don't be surprised if they get swept. I think they will steal one game, but I'm not as confident as I was in that anymore. Again, they're just playing really bad basketball. Brett Brown refuses to space the floor for whatever reason. I think this is going to be his last series as the Philadelphia head coach. Let me know what you guys think. I want to switch gears here to the Boston Celtics just very quickly. Jason Tatum is a top 15 player in the NBA. He's probably top 12. He might even be top 10. To be 22 years old, dropping this amount of points in this amount of playoff games, he's absolutely ridiculous. Just a quick point on him, man. He is going to be one of the best players in the NBA for a long time. If you ask me who he reminds me of a lot, I've said Kevin Durant comparisons. I found a better one. If you remember prime Carmelo Anthony, I think he's a little bit better version of that because of the not a little bit better version. He reminds me a lot of a young Carmelo Anthony. Early Denver Nuggets Carmelo Anthony, super athletic, great shooter, likes the mid-range game as well. I think he's a better defender than Carmelo was. I think he was probably a better teammate than Carmelo was in Denver. But I think we can reach the point now where Jason Tatum is the best player on the Celtics, meaning he's already better than a guy in Kemba Walker, who's been one of the best point guards in the league the last 5 to 7 years, which is absolutely crazy to think about, but it's true. Jason Tatum is the number one option in the Boston Celtics, and he is their best player. Again, only 22 years old. He's going to grow and grow even more. Finally, one last note on the NBA before I switch up and talk about the NFL and some stories that have been going on there and break down a team schedule. So the Clippers actually lost their game, and the series became 1-1. And shout out to the Dallas Mavericks, who I said this game was going to be closer than people think. I thought it was going to go to 6 games. I still believe in that. I think the Clippers are a better team. But Kristaps Porzingis has really started to find his legs. Again, it kind of takes a year and a half after those traumatic leg injuries to really turn around and be the player you once were. We kind of saw that with Gordon Hayward. We definitely saw it with Paul George once he got to, Oklahoma City, and now obviously with the Los Angeles Clippers. It takes almost a year plus, maybe even up to 2 years to see the player that you were before traumatic leg injury, which is why I'm not too worried about Victor Oladipo's numbers not being what they were just yet. I think next year, no matter what team Oladipo plays for, you will start to see that, even if he stays in Indiana. But again, man, Luka Doncic is absolutely special. I think he's going to be the best player in the NBA. I think there's a lot of young players I like. I love Tatum. I love Zion. I love Morant. I love Bam Adebayo. I love all of these guys. But I really do believe that Luka Doncic will be the best player in the NBA for a long, long time. I don't know if he will be the face of the franchise like LeBron James is. I think there's guys like Giannis, like Zion, who will be kind of the face of the league. But I think he might be the best all-around scorer and passer. And he might already be a top 10 player in the NBA, man. He's leading them into games against the Clippers. He's dropping 40-plus points in playoff games, man. Close to triple-doubles. He almost averaged a triple-double for the year. Absolutely crazy stuff. Luka Doncic is a special type player, and I can't wait to see what he does. I don't think they're going to win this series, but as they get older, as they get even better than they are now, if you can even think about it, don't be surprised if Dallas adds a kind of another third superstar. Who wouldn't want to play right now with Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis? How good they're being right now. Owner Mark Cuban, everything like that. The Dallas market, another team to watch out for a potential superstar signing like Giannis Antetokounmpo, guys like that. It's going to be really interesting to see. Shout out the Dallas Mavericks. They're playing absolutely unreal right now. All right, we're going to take one final break. On the other side of the break, Melvin Ingram might be on the move according to some people, and Yannick Ngakoue trade in the next 24 hours potentially. We'll talk about both of those defensive ends, some landing spots for them, and we'll talk a little bit about Des Bryant potentially going to the Baltimore Ravens. What does that mean for him? Can he still play? And then we'll break down an NFL team schedule. We'll get into all of that right after this final break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's show. And I want to switch gears now to the National Football League. Two defensive ends are reportedly, or at least one is definitely on the market, and another one has the potential to be on the market. And I want to start off with the second one. That's Melvin Ingram, the 31-year-old pass rusher for the Los Angeles Chargers, one of the best pass rushers in the league, is apparently not practicing because he's unhappy with his contract situation. Of course, they just paid Joey Bosa. They have a guy like Derwin James on the pipeline where they have to pay him as well. They also just paid Austin Eckler. So they're running out of money, and they have to pay a guy, Melvin Ingram, who's a little bit older, 31-year-old pass rusher. And I was thinking about some teams that could potentially be interested in him because the other pass rusher who's on the market is Yannick Ngakoue, and he's a little bit younger. He's 24, 25. So I really believe any team could really trade after him because you always need good pass rushers. But Melvin Ingram screams to me of a team, like some contending teams that might want to go after him, some teams that might be on the cusp of something that could want to go after him as well. And a couple of teams came to mind for me. One of them being the Philadelphia Eagles, who are kind of trying to go all in on Carson Wentz. They obviously aren't paying him a ton in retrospect in comparison to some of the other high-paying NFL quarterbacks. I could see them really pushing, trying to get a guy like Melvin Ingram. I could see a team like the Los Angeles Rams. I doubt the Chargers would trade with the Rams, but who knows? They're trying to boost the defense that has taken a lot of hits ever since they lost in the Super Bowl, and they've been willing to wheel and deal picks as well. A team like the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know if they would be able to pay him, but you always know the Cowboys are always going to be all in on things like that. A team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well makes a lot of sense for me. One of the best defensive units in the league already, trying to bolster, go all in on a championship for Tom Brady. Maybe not pay him right away, but willing to pay him in the future. A team like the Miami Dolphins, who might be on the cusp of something of pushing for a playoff spot, depending on Tua Tagovailoa, trying to booster his defense. Brian Flores, a defensive guy, I could see them going after him as well. Again, a team like the New England Patriots, who might want to be all in on Cam Newton and still make the playoffs, everything like that. So pretty much think of a lot of any contending teams with the money. A team like the Indianapolis Colts as well makes a lot of sense. That's who I expect to go after a guy like Melvin Ingram. Again, it's an interesting situation because he is older and the Chargers are clearly running out of money, and they just paid his counterpart who's better than him but also a lot younger than him. But Melvin Ingram is still a top defensive edge rusher in the league. A team like Cleveland could also make a push as well. They're sort of going all in. A team like Minnesota, who just lost Everson Griffin, I could see that as well. A team like the Green Bay Packers. So all of these contending teams make a lot of sense for a guy like Melvin Ingram, so it's an interesting situation to keep an eye on. Also, a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, think of pretty much any team under the sun when it comes to pass rushers. He's young, he's incredible, he averages at least 8 sacks a season, he's at a career high of 12.5. I expect teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the Miami Dolphins, and also keep an eye on the New York Jets, who have been the heavy favorites apparently to get him. They're trying to rebolster up that defense. They have the money to pay him. Anything to help Sam Darnold they can, they will try to do. They also have some extra picks now that they traded them to Seattle. Or they got picks from Seattle after trading Jamal Adams there. So they have some picks to wheel and deal with. Would they want to get a pass rusher, a guy of Yannick Ngakoue's caliber, who at least gets you 8 sacks? And again, only 24, 25 years old, so he could break his career high very, very soon, which is 12.5, which is an elite year for a defensive end. Just some things, some food for thought. Also, just to round up some NFL news, Dez Bryant worked out with the Baltimore Ravens, which is interesting because they obviously were in some sort of entanglement with Antonio Brown. Was he going to play? And then kind of after his suspension came down that it was going to be at least 8 games, some teams have started to back away from him, switch gears to some other veterans. Chris Hogan got picked up by, I believe, the New York Jets, and now Dez Bryant. It hasn't been official that he's been picked up by the Baltimore Ravens, but he had a workout, and apparently everything went well. But we don't know if it's going to be an immediate signing or he left without a contract was all it says really for the reports. It will be interesting to see. Can Dez Bryant still play at this point? I think he still can. Of course, I was more excited of him post-Achilles injury that he had in that New Orleans Saints the first week he was there. He was obviously great in Dallas. Coming back now, could he be, a big target for a guy like the Baltimore Ravens? Absolutely. Would he be the number 1 target on there like he would have been in Dallas, or maybe the number 2 target like he would have been in New Orleans when he was there? I don't think so. I see Dez Bryant at this stage in his career as a good number 3 veteran option to help guys like Marquise Brown along, and also as a major red zone target, as a big body receiver. That's where I could see him making a really, really big impact on a team like the Baltimore Ravens. That's just where I think would happen to Dez Bryant. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers would be. I'm assuming it would be a 1-year veteran minimum type deal. But again, as a big body receiver on those third downs and also in the red zone, I could totally see Dez Bryant still making an impact at this stage of his career, despite being, I believe, 32 years old. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the part of, the roundup and everything like that. I want to finally get to the Buffalo Bills. Now, there's been some videos surfacing about Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen working out and training camp, everything like that. Josh Allen looks a lot bigger. His legs look a lot bigger. His arms look a lot bigger. Not that he necessarily needed to get any bigger already, but he is a dual threat quarterback. He is a running quarterback. He's a phenomenal athlete. He might even be considered a better runner than he is passer. And if he has more of a running back type build, specifically in the lower body, that could help him out in the long term. And I want to break down their schedule because, again, they are the heavy favorites, supposedly at least, for the AFC East. I think that they will win it. I think a team like the Miami Dolphins could try to sneak up there and give them a hard push, but I still think they're a year or 2 away. I think the Buffalo Bills will win it. However, I don't view them as some of these other people view them as a 13-win team making the next leap. I don't think Josh Allen's going to win MVP. Again, 27% of the time Josh Allen threw a football, it was an absolutely uncatchable pass, highest in the NFL by far. And the only other guys competing with him for that stat are all backups now. So it's going to be interesting to see. They have an interesting schedule, so let's just get right into it here. Week 1, the Buffalo Bills play the New York Jets. They should take care of business there. I think they will win that one pretty convincingly. I think the Jets might be one of the worst teams in the league this year, giving the Bills 1 win. Week 2 against the Miami Dolphins. It's in Miami, so I'm going to give this one slightly to the edge of Miami. I think the heat will be a little bit too much. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick will still be starting at this point, giving the better chance to the Dolphins to win that week. If Tua was starting and was only his second week in the year, I would probably give it to the Buffalo Bills, but they'll still have the experienced Ryan Fitzpatrick there. So I think the Bills will start off 1-1 this season. Then they play the Rams in Buffalo. I am going to give them that win. LA coming all the way to the East Coast for a 1:00 game. That will be tough for them to do, and I think with COVID and everything like that, teams are going to leave later rather than earlier probably to get to the game. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. I think the Bills will get their second win of the season there. Then they have to play the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they will win that one as well, despite having to go all the way to the West Coast. I like John Gruden. I like Mike Mayock, their GM, a lot. I like pieces on their team like Henry Ruggs, Darren Waller, and Josh Jacobs. I don't think their defense is there yet, and I don't think their offensive line is there yet. And I'm not entirely sold on Derek Carr like some other people are as well. So I think the Buffalo Bills will start off 3-1, which is really good for them, obviously. Then they face the Tennessee Titans. I don't think they win that one. I think that defense will be able to contain the stagnant Buffalo offense that I think will happen this year. I don't expect this offense to boom. I think Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen will have their moments, considering Stephon Diggs is one of the best deep target threats in the league. But still, I don't trust Josh Allen as a thrower, so I don't trust them to beat the Tennessee Titans, putting them at 3-2. And then they're going to dip to 3-3 when they play Kansas City on a night game. Kansas City's just too overpowering for them to really even compete with them, putting the Bills at 3-3. So a good start, and then that tough part of the schedule, back-to-back games, Titans and Chiefs. I don't see them winning those ones. Then you have the game against the New York Jets again. I think they win that one pretty convincingly again. I think the Jets might be the worst team in the league this year, besides maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I don't think they will win that one. The Jets that is. Putting Buffalo out for their 4th win of the season right there against a team, the New York Jets. They'll already have swept them. Then they're playing the New England Patriots. Now this is interesting because the Patriots have owned them the past decade. It'll be a new quarterback in Cam Newton. This one is in Buffalo, so I actually am going to say that the Buffalo Bills pull this one out and beat the Patriots for the first time in what feels like maybe forever. I think they will absolutely beat them in Buffalo, putting them at 5 wins on the year. Now you get into the toughest part of the schedule for the Buffalo Bills. Here are the next couple of games. Seahawks, Cardinals, Chargers, 49ers, Steelers, Broncos, Patriots. That's how you end your season, and then the Dolphins the last week of the year. I mean, come on. That is a brutal way to end the schedule. You're already sitting at 5 wins going against teams, again, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Chargers, the 49ers, the Steelers, the Broncos, the Patriots in Foxborough. That is an absolutely brutal schedule. How many games do you see them winning? I see one absolute win maybe against the Chargers, putting them at 6 wins. I don't think they'll beat the Seahawks. I don't think they'll beat the Cardinals. I don't think they'll beat the 49ers. So that's already at 6 wins for them. I do believe that they will beat the Steelers, putting them at 7 wins on the season. And then you have those last 2 games of the year. I don't think they beat the Denver Broncos in Denver. So the last 2 weeks are Patriots and Bills, and they're already at 7 wins. I think they'll win one or both of them, putting them as an 8-8 or 9-7 team. I'd probably take the 9-7 team. That's where I believe the Buffalo Bills will end up. And I do think they will win the division at 9-7. I think the AFC East will be a really poor division this year. Again, Jets are a bottom 3 team in the league. Patriots are going through a major retool. I see them going 6-10. The Dolphins are on the rise, but I still think they're going 7-9, 8-8. And I think the Bills could win it at 8-8 on a tiebreaker at 9-7. That's how I see the Buffalo Bills season turning out. Let me know what you all think. Again, I don't see Buffalo as this 12-4 type team. Not with that back end of the schedule. That is absolutely brutal. I don't see how they pull it off. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I am Alex Masfer, and make sure to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast, and also leave us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate all of that. Again, I'm Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.